Hello, tacticians! I hope you are prepared to intensificate your Ave Imperatoring, because today I am going to be taking a plunge into Celestine and the many controversies surrounding her in Tacticus. How bad is it? Well, come have a look.
Such beautiful wings. I want wings too. Will you draw me a pair of wings, boss?
Yeah, we both know yours are going to be black, Alexa.
Mimi.
Celestine's active ability moves her to a free hex adjacent to any enemy target on the field, whom she then attacks using her regular stats and a damage bonus. Celestine cannot move twice per turn using this ability, so she can only target adjacent enemies with it after moving. The game selects the hex to move Celestine to semi-smartly. It will prioritize high ground versus the target, then picking up power-ups, and also possibly being next to a Gemini. You can override this by moving Celestine first, or by selecting a target hex within Celestine's movement range while using the ability. Despite partly using Celestine's base stats, the attack counts as an ability for purposes of ability damage missions and various interactions. This ability may not be used on the first turn Celestine is in the battle. Celestine's passive ability causes her to summon a Gemini Superia, or just Gemini, into an adjacent hex when Celestine is attacked or damaged. Environmental damage, such as from the hex being on fire, does trigger the ability. Celestine can summon 2 Gemini per battle. Any damage taken by Celestine is transferred to an adjacent Gemini, with the older Gemini taking the damage first if both of them are adjacent to Celestine. Also, I think the proper singular of Gemini is a Gemina. Celestine has a mobility of 4, but only a 3-hit power-type melee attack for a standard reach of 5, however slightly improved by her flying trait. Celestine has one of the smallest HP puddles in the game, and even though she has relatively good armor and brings an armor piece along with a weapon and a crit booster, she is 100% reliant on her Gemini for survival. Celestine has 2 traits, the Sororitas specialty Act of Faith and the already mentioned flying. The Act of Faith is shared by all the Sororitas on the team and gives them a stack of flat 10% extra critical hit chance and a 25% boost to the critical damage stat for each enemy defeated by your Imperial units and for each of your Imperial units being defeated, stacking infinitely, but the stack is used up and reset to 0 when a Sororitas crits. Any kills from this critting attack will start a new Act of Fate stack already. The flying trait allows her to move to any hex within her movement range for the small price of inability to benefit from trenches or from high grass, further reducing her survivability. Celestine is an infamous PvP hero. Her mobility, combined with her ability to ignore at least 2 overwatches or any other attacks, so long as she doesn't corner herself, more on that later, makes her a royal pain in the donkey in the tournament arena. She can suicide swoop a critical squishy, often with an increased crit rate from her Gemini dying to Overwatch, and thus stacking Act of Faith. Or hold a control point or grab an important buff fairly safely, provided you keep track of how many Gemini you have left. A double HP buffed Celestine is a nightmare in the power-ups modes. She can be a nasty defender in the Guild Wars, especially when paired with Isabella and Yarick. She suicides on turn 1 and gets resurrected along with her Gemini by Izzy while stacking Yarick's active. Using her active ability is one of the safe ways to attack Calandis in melee, but it still triggers Overwatch when used from a distance. And as if this wasn't fun and balanced enough, With a potentially double Ragnar Scream, her active ability functionally becomes a "any unit on the board dies" button. Maybe with the exception of Typhus and maybe Arjak, maybe. Outside of PvP, she may be useful in some of the raids as an ablative armor mobile tank. Mortarion, Avatar of Cain, Thaddeus, perhaps. But there are better ways to fight those, I think. Celestine's main weakness is a dependency on her Gemini for survival. If you can completely surround her before attacking her, she will have nowhere to summon the Gemini to and will be defeated easily. Cornering her and spawning multiple summons at once with Aleph, Rimas or Bellator will see her go home rather quickly. Sometimes it's also possible to bait out her active into Overwatch onto surrounded hex, because the AI in the arena pretty reliably uses it on turn 2 against a squishy target. Now, for some ideas on how to exactly do that, you may want to go back to the description of her active ability for a rough guide on how the active ability is aimed. Shout out to Snowprint for designing some maps with hexes along the edges that aren't part of the battlefield but do look accessible. Well done, you! Also, if you can bait her onto a hex where she only has one free adjacent hex, you can kill her with only 2 Overwatches. The Overwatches happen simultaneously, and the game doesn't do that very well, which results in the first Overwatch killing the first Gemini, or Gemina, and the second Overwatch not spawning the second Gemina because there was no free hex, and thus going straight into Celestine. She is also extremely vulnerable to Ulf, who not only will counter-attack her on using her active from a hex next to him, but also immediately chop down her Gemini. Though apparently he does not counter her when she lands next to him and attacks. See the shown footage from Tournament Arena. And her swoop is sneakily mitigated by parry, such as on Godswill or Jaeger, and by Jane Zar's passive, all of whom are, funnily enough, quite good in a Ragnar team. So, would I recommend grinding her out in the campaign? Well, absolutely. Even if you hate Tournament Arena as much as I do, you will still find uses for her in the Guild Wars, at the very least. Phew, that was a lot of talking to do in 60 seconds. Do you have any special uses or recipes with Celestine to share in the comments? Regardless whether you do or whether you don't, thank you for watching, and, well, I'll be back with something eventually. Have a good one, Tactician!